Hey everyone, I'm Keziah. Before we jump in, I want you to check the time where you are right now. Pause. Really look. Now let me ask, have you ever had to choose your own peace over family, the people who share your blood? If you've got a story, drop it below. Trust me, this one's not ending the way anyone expects. So, this year, my parents shattered a champagne bottle over my head at my brother's birthday party, all because I refused to hand over the deed to my condo, my $450,000 condo. You probably think that's the worst part, but nah, not even close. By then, I'd already been edited out of family photos, and they were making moves to sell my home behind my back. When I pushed back, they filmed a video labeling me the traitor. Talk about rewriting history. I never thought justice would look like an empty house or a wrinkled napkin left in your spot at dinner. Let me paint the scene. It was one of those San Antonio evenings where the sunlight hangs on forever, making everything look soft and golden. I pulled up to my parents' house. Well, their palace, really. The valet actually opened my door, which feels weird when your Toyota is parked beside a row of BMWs and Teslas. My car had never looked cleaner, but it still stood out like a thrift store find at a yacht club. I had on a simple navy dress, barely any jewelry, just some old pearl studs from college. I brought a nicely wrapped gift, a monogrammed pen set for my brother Lazaro, and made my way to the porch, where laughter was practically pouring out the front door. Inside, the place was transformed. String lights crisscrossed the yard, a jazz band was doing its thing, and the smell of cedar-planked salmon made my stomach grumble. It was the kind of party that makes weddings look basic. My brother, ultimate overachiever, firstborn, blessed by the stars, was turning 40, and the whole house glowed. Just inside, a guy in a tight vest stood like a bouncer behind a podium with the guest list. "Name?" he asked. Keziah Reynolds." My voice even sounded extra careful. He scanned the list, furrowed his brow. "You're listed as +1 under the Reynolds family block." I blinked, thinking maybe he read that wrong. Nope. He spun the chart so I could see. There it was, typed out professionally. Reynolds family at the top, individual names under that. Lazaro, Delora, Orville, cousins, everyone. Even the distant cousin and her 3 kids made the cut. At the very bottom, in tiny script, +1 guest of family. Great. "Guess I'm the lucky +1, I said. He was awkward, offered to handwrite something else, but I just pinned on the generic guest badge, right over my heart, and kept moving. The pin tugged at the fabric, a reminder that this, right here, was my place in things. Inside, a ballroom sparkled with chandeliers. The tables shimmered beneath silk covers. My seat, back wall, table 18, awkwardly wedged behind a pillar and right next to the swinging kitchen door. Perfect spot for feeling invisible. My table setting even looked like it had given up. The silverware was crooked. The napkin, meant to be a swan, drooped off the plate like it just couldn't keep it together anymore. I sat down, trying to relax and not feel bitter as laughter and champagne echoed from across the room. Lazaro held court at the main table, every conversation radiating toward him. People toasted him from across the hall. My mom, Delora, floated from group to group, telling anyone who would listen about her brilliant son and how he became a VP in just 4 years. It was like rehearsing lines for a candidate launch party. No one glanced my way, except my dad, Orville, who looked straight at me just long enough to acknowledge I existed before turning back to his business friends. I sipped my water, feeling icy beads roll down the glass, letting the coolness remind me I'm still here, still real. The napkin at my plate, crumpled into a sad swan, caught my eye. Maybe it was just a mistake. Maybe someone just messed up the list, or maybe this was on purpose. My role as the outsider on absolute display. A server came over to clear the empty chair beside me. "That one taken?" she asked. I shook my head. "No, it's all yours." Suddenly, the room started clinking forks against glasses. The lights dimmed, a spotlight clicked on over the little stage. The mic screeched, and someone called out over the speakers, "And now, A few words from someone very special to us. Please welcome Keziah Reynolds. I froze. The applause was just polite enough to remind me I wasn't really wanted up there. I got up, confused, having never been asked to prepare anything, and made my way toward the stage. Delora flashed a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Lazaro nodded. Orville lounged, grinning like he'd already seen this play. No one handed me a card or notes or even a heads up. I stood there in the spotlight, eyes trying to adjust, my mind racing. And then a video started behind me, a highlight reel of my brother's life. Childhood baseball, science fairs, graduations, blueprints, meetings with the mayor, accolades stacking up. My mom narrated, from the beginning, Lazaro was destined for greatness. He's our light, our foundation, our pride. Then my father's voice, you don't teach this kind of brilliance, it's just born in you. I stared ahead, trying not to show anything. Not once did they mention the loan I'd sent to help get Lazaro's startup off the ground, the weekends I spent fixing client decks when his tech crashed, or that time I slept on a concrete floor so some installer wouldn't flake. In their version of history, I simply didn't exist. When the video ended, gold letters spelled out, a legacy in the making. The applause barely reached me. Before I could move, Delora was already on her feet, ushering me in. And now some words from our ever-thoughtful little sister, she chirped, steering me to the mic. So this was the show, a spotlight for me, a performance I wasn't even told about. I swallowed, palms sweating, eyes down. It's a beautiful night, I managed. And Lazaro, you've always been able to light up a room. That's when Delora cut in, laughing. Oh, honey, tell them. Wouldn't it be the perfect gift if you handed over your condo key tonight? Suddenly it was dead quiet. You know the type of silence that doesn't just fall? It crushes everything in its path. Someone coughed. A phone camera clicked. My mouth dried out. What? I whispered to her off mic. Delora just smiled wider. The place in Austin, that lovely 2-bedroom, you travel so much. And now that Asali and Lazaro are married, it just makes sense. Orville spoke up, voice booming. Come on, Kez, it's just a formality. You don't even use the guest room. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a stampede designed to flatten any chance of me saying no. The crowd didn't know whether to clap or cringe. Lazaro stared at his plate. The Sally's lips went tight, like she'd seen this coming. I took a deep breath and leaned into the mic. This wasn't agreed on, my voice sharper than planned. The response was a mixture of gasps, some sympathetic, mostly uncomfortable. Delora just waved it off, smiling like she was hosting improv night. Don't be dramatic, sweetie. Think of it as a gesture, a symbol of love. Every nerve in my body wanted to list off the sacrifices, the money, the sleepless nights, the silent support. But I didn't. Instead, I caught my mother's eye. The mask she wore so carefully, the cool calculation slipping through the smile. This was all scripted, right down to the moment. I set down the mic, the sound echoing, my hand trembling. And then I gave them the smallest, coldest smile I could muster, the kind that means, I see everything. Nothing slips by. I stepped off the stage. The moment my heels hit the floor, I didn't get far. Orville, my father, was waiting near the dessert table, arms stiff at his sides and jaw knotted in that familiar way that always spelled trouble. Mom, Delora, hovered close, champagne in hand, voice a hiss, barely masked by a brittle smile. She was mad, not concerned. Her words seethed through gritted teeth. She just embarrassed us. I could hear it, even if she half hoped I wouldn't. I paused, scanning the room for anyone who might meet my eyes with a flicker of warmth. Thessaly looked away, pretending to admire a centerpiece. Lazaro, my now celebrated sibling, seemed awfully fixated on the label of his drink. I stood there under the brutal light, grounded by the echo of laughter that didn't quite reach me. That's when Orville picked up a champagne bottle, not for a toast, but to swing. The thick glass arced silently, and in a blink it struck me just above the temple. My world exploded in white haze, not blackout, but a blinding camera flash stuck on repeat. There was a rush of warmth, sudden and sickening, crawling down my cheek. Gasps cut through the room. No one moved. Hands clutched their phones. I heard, "Oh my God," somewhere to the left, and did he just... Someone's reflex was to film, not to help. Delora spat. "Ungrateful brat! After all we gave you!" There was no pretending I was still safe in the family. With one hand pressed to my head, I felt blood slicking my palm. My humiliation was hotter than the pain. For a second, I waited for someone. Anyone, Jonah, my cousin, who usually smelled of diesel fuel, even shouted, "Call the police!" But his feet stayed glued to the floor. I straightened, eyes burning. My pale dress was already decorated with a splash of red. All I could think was, "Don't crumble. Don't give them what they want." A woman whispered, "Is she okay?" Another replied flatly, "No, that man hit her. I got it on video." But I didn't scream or argue. I walked out, past Lazaro, who didn't look up. Thessaly squeezed his arm, but stayed seated. Outside, the air felt thick, the quiet broken by nothing but my footsteps. I called an Uber, voice shaking. The driver looked alarmed, but I brushed it off with a simple, "Hospital, please." At the ER, everything was cold. Hallways, staff, even the way the nurse asked if anyone was coming to get me. I shook my head. Just me. She only nodded, understanding more than she said. It hit me in that antiseptic silence. That was the moment it ended. No more showing up for people who never showed up for me. The next morning, I woke in new sheets at Leah's. My head throbbed. My phone buzzed. Dozens of notifications, none from family. People I hadn't heard from in years messaged me. A video had surfaced, grainy and raw, of my father swinging that champagne bottle. I deleted it, but the shake in my hand stayed. I tried to anchor myself in routine, but when I fished in my purse for my apartment key, my one talisman of independence, it was gone. I emptied my bag frantically. No key. Then I remembered. A week ago, Orville had accidentally taken my bag home from a family dinner. "Thought it was your mother's," he'd said with a sheepish shrug. That's when the call came. Unknown number. I answered out of habit, not hope. "Hi, Miss Keziah. This is Jeanette from HomeQuest Realty. Just confirming our 2 p.m. walkthrough at your condo." I didn't schedule anything. She hesitated, papers shuffling. "It's listed under your name, with Mr. Orville Sullivan as co-signer." Panic crawled up my neck. I never listed my place. "Would you like to cancel the showing?" I hung up, hands ice cold, realizing my parents weren't just humiliating me, they were trying to erase me. I opened my laptop and shot off an email. "Marlo, I need help. My parents are trying to steal my home." My fingers hovered over send. For the first time, I thought maybe I'd never had all the cards, but at least I could play the ones I still held. By noon, I was standing at the condo with a locksmith. The sun was merciless, but the real burn was the fresh scratches on the doorknob. "Someone's been in and out," he observed, adding, "Want a deadbolt too?" Absolutely. That night I sat in my living room, new locks on every door, listening to the metallic scent hang in the air. Sleep felt impossible. My phone chimed in the quiet. An email from Delora, subject, "Let's talk, Keziah." The body, "We love you. This has gone far enough. Just us. Let's fix this." For a flicker, hope flared. Maybe, just maybe, family is thicker than betrayal. I showed up the next afternoon, heart pounding as I parked in the driveway. The house was staged to look like home. Orchids, lemon tea, cookies, childhood photos dusted off and placed just so. It was all a script. Delora's hug was rehearsed. Inside, Lazaro perched on the couch, silent. Orville carried out an envelope, his peace offering. It was a deed transfer agreement. Cold, legal, final. "You're asking me to sign over my condo." I didn't even try to hide the edge in my voice. "Just paperwork, sweetheart," Delora crooned. "You don't need all that space." Orville's eyes narrowed. "Don't you trust us?" I set the folder down. "You set this up like a homecoming, orchids and cookies, but it's just theft with better lighting." Lazaro muttered, "It's just property, Keziah." But it wasn't, and he knew it. I walked out, not stopping for any of their parting lines. Before the door even closed, I dialed Marlo. "File everything," I told him. "Go all in." There was nothing left holding me back. Morning arrived not with sunlight or coffee aromas, but with a dense silence that pressed down on me. I brewed some black tea and sat by the kitchen window, watching the blurry world outside through fogged glass. Later, I parked outside Marlowe's office downtown. The city buzzed around me, but inside the building it was cold and still. Marlowe was waiting with a folder. "I went through everything last night," he said. "Good news, you still own the deed to the house they're living in." I blinked, surprised. "Are you sure?" He flipped through pages, tapping the signature with his pen. "You bought it back in 2010, remember? It was a foreclosure rescue. They never transferred ownership back. They just lived there on assumption and memories." I leaned back, the weight settling. "So I gave them a lifeline, and they turned it into a noose." Marlowe nodded quietly, offering a look that said, "This is your moment." I took the pen. Back home, there was no triumph in me, only clear purpose. Rage had already shredded itself to bits inside. What remained was precise, measured, final. Within hours, Marlowe filed the notice to vacate. No warnings, no yelling matches, no grandstanding on our parts. Real life doesn't roll like a reality show. It's delivered in silence and folded papers. 3 days later, the sheriff showed up with the eviction order. Lazaro, ever the family documentarian, filmed the whole thing on a shaky home security camera and promptly shared it in the family chat. The video showed Orville in a rumpled bathrobe, toast in one hand, blinking like he'd woken up in someone else's nightmare. Delora stood behind him, frozen mid-sip on her porcelain mug. The officer handed over the sealed envelope. Delora's body stiffened. Orville snatched it, skimmed, then angrily slammed it on the wall. I watched it twice, then shut my phone off. That night, I sat alone in my condo, lights off, sipping chamomile tea with honey. My phone lay face down, screen dark, and the world outside kept moving. The rush of cars, a distant dog's bark, jazz drifting up from a balcony. Inside, time stood still. I didn't cry or pace or toast the empty room. I just breathed. Sometimes justice isn't standing over someone. Sometimes it's choosing never to stand beside them again. My phone buzzed once. I almost ignored it. Then I turned it over. A message from Thessaly. "They've done worse than you know." Attached was a photo. An old leather-bound album, frayed with age, spread open on her lap. Page after page, but no pictures of me. Not from birthdays, graduations, nothing. It was like they'd surgically erased me from the story. Then came her text. "They've been erasing you for years, even from memory." I blinked, whispered to the quiet, "So, I wasn't crazy." The quiet validation hit harder than all the wounds combined. I didn't reply immediately. I just stared at that photo, letting the cold truth settle deep. Eventually, I typed, "Thank you for showing me what I always felt but couldn't prove." The next morning, a silence filled me like the calm before a storm. Not the outside kind, but the inside kind. I barely know why, but I opened social media. There was a video. Delora had posted a clip of my speech at Lazaro's party, just the moment where my voice cracked when I said, "This wasn't agreed on." Between shots of him with balloons and me alone, stiff and awkward. The caption read, "We raised her with love. We never expected betrayal." Comments appeared quickly. "Ungrateful, need the whole story, some kids are never satisfied." They weren't rewriting history. They were inventing a whole new narrative with me as villain. But my hands were steady, which surprised me. No shaking, no tears. Instead, I opened my Dropbox and uploaded everything. All the wire transfers from me to them, the original condo deed, emails about loans, even a voicemail from Mom asking me to cover a mortgage just once. No commentary, no calls to action, just a folder named Truth if anyone cared to see it. I shut the laptop firmly. I wasn't waiting for it to go viral. I just didn't owe them silence anymore. That afternoon, I dug through an old storage bin untouched for years. Tucked beneath an old college t-shirt was my high school photo album, one I'd made myself. Inside were pictures of me. Awkward teeth, band uniform, cringy prom dress. Proof I existed, proof I belonged. If nowhere else, then at least to myself. In the middle, I found a sticky note in my dad's handwriting. Kez knew you had it in you. Proud of you, kid. Dad. I didn't cry or smile. I closed the book gently, slid it back in the bin, and said softly to the empty kitchen, "You did love me once, but that doesn't excuse who you are now." Later that evening, out of the blue, a message came from my Uncle Marvin, Mom's brother. "Saw the folder. About time someone told the truth. If you need a witness, I'm here." I stared at it a long moment. Maybe the glass house isn't shattered all at once. Maybe it falls, crack by crack, each person finally daring to see the real story underneath the lies. The next day, I drove down the road without music, just the quiet hum of tires and flickering streetlights. When I pulled up, the moving truck was already there. Workers carried boxes from the garage, but these weren't my parents' things. Their stuff had gone days before, after the eviction. What remained were just leftovers, things stripped of meaning. I stepped out, closing my car door softly. No need to be loud anymore. The fight in me had turned quiet. The house felt heavy, emptied of its laughter and Sunday meals. The walls were blank. No pictures, no memories lingering in frames or dusty shelves. Sunlight filtered through the blinds in a worn-out glow. I walked slowly, touching places I'd known so well. The chipped kitchen cabinet Dad never fixed, the living room corner where I'd built forts, the cracked bathroom tile Mom blamed on a contractor but I knew was from Lazero's dropped hairdryer. Everything was still here. And yet, somehow, it wasn't. Then, on the kitchen counter, I spotted a letter addressed to me, printed, cold, impersonal. This was never your home anyway. No signature, no apology, just a parting shot typed on plain paper. I folded it carefully, tucked it in my coat pocket without a second glance. I didn't flinch. Before I left, something made me pause at the hallway cabinet beneath the stairs, usually forgotten. Inside was a small wooden box, dust-covered, unmarked. I carried it to the kitchen island and lifted the lid slowly. Inside was a photo of me at 8, pigtails uneven, missing a tooth, clutching a science trophy bigger than my arms. I'd forgotten that day, winning first place for a homemade erupting volcano. Behind that photo was a swan-shaped napkin, one of mine from that dinner party, folded just like I'd left it on the table. Crooked, forgotten. No idea what it meant. Guilt, forgetting, a failed throwaway? But it was mine. I held it to my chest for a moment, then handed the box to the realtor waiting by the door. "This stays with me." She nodded, understanding. No one really knows when something carries more than just dust. I walked outside without looking back. No porch, no roof, no door waving goodbye on Thanksgiving. None of it needed to be seen anymore. That night, back in my condo, the lights off, I sat with the box and the swan napkin in my lap. My phone buzzed, a message from Marlo. "Sales final, funds wired, you're free." I stared long. Not disbelief, but something like remembering what freedom feels like. The morning light poured through my windows like a fresh start. I folded the swan napkin on my dining table like a quiet promise, kept not by them, but by me. If you've ever had to walk away from family to protect your soul, share your story below. I read every one. And if you believe in healing through truth and quiet strength, hit subscribe. There's more ahead. A few days later, an envelope arrived in my mailbox. Cream-colored, thick cardstock, my name written in curling handwriting I immediately recognized as Thessaly's. I opened it slowly. Inside was a formal baby shower invitation. Stylish, simple, but with a note at the bottom. Just a line. No fanfare. "I'm sorry, I didn't know how far they went. You deserved better, Thessaly." No excuses, no elaborate apologies. Just a quiet acknowledgement that lifted a weight I hadn't realized I was still carrying. I stared at that card for a long time, not because I wasn't sure what to do with it, but because something inside me wanted to tear it up. Yet a wiser, quieter part of me knew some bridges don't need burning. They aren't yours to burn. Instead, I wrote a check to the local women's shelter. The memo line read, "In honor of new beginnings," and I didn't attend the shower. Some cycles don't close with screams. Some stories end quietly. Silence, when chosen, can be its own revolution. That evening, I made a simple meal, pasta with garlic and thyme, set 2 plates down, not from habit, but on purpose, not for what was lost, but for what still could be built. 15 minutes later, Amina arrived, arms full, a bottle of wine in one hand, a tiny orchid in the other. "You need more green in here," she said, placing the orchid by the window like she'd always lived there. We ate slowly, the kind of meal where neither time nor approval mattered. Conversation drifted, from work to books to a show she swore I'd love. I swore I'd never watch it. At some point, I glanced at the swan napkin on the table. It wasn't perfect anymore. The edges had softened, the creases no longer sharp like the origami shields I used to fold for family dinners to make them see me. But this swan sat there quietly alone, and it was enough. I thought about the girl I used to be, hiding in corners at parties, smiling too wide in silence, folding napkins like armor, and about the woman I'd become, not cold, not harsh, just whole. I looked at Amina, refilled our glasses, and raised mine slightly. "To building our own tables," I said. She clinked her glass to mine, no more begging for a seat. That night, I didn't think about what they lost. I thought about what I reclaimed, not just property or dignity, but presence, identity, a quiet kind of power no eviction or lie could ever take away. And that, I realized, was worth more than any inheritance they withheld. Sometimes the deepest wounds don't come from strangers, but from the ones who raised us. This isn't just a story about betrayal. It's about reclaiming your voice, your space, and your peace. Have you ever had to walk away from family to protect your soul? Tell me in the comments. I read every word. If you believe in healing through truth and quiet strength, make sure to subscribe for more stories like this. Thanks for listening.